You are listening to the Baobab Project. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us under the Baobab tree from wherever you are in the world today. We are joining you from Halifax, Nova Scotia. We've got so much to explore, from culture to lifestyle to health, relationships, education, and so much more. Now over to our podcast host for today.
Welcome again on the Baobab Tree, and my name is Randy Headley. I'm hosting this podcast. It's called Like Old Folks Used to Say. I have with me several participants, several students and colleagues who will be able to express some of the old sayings they've heard over the years. And we will just dig into these expressions. We say sometimes expressions, sayings, proverbs. We will use these terms interchangeably, hoping that at the end of our discussion, we will all learn something under this baobab tree, and we'll be able to share with those we meet in the near future. So I'll start by stating that I'm coming from a context outside Canada. I'm bringing my Guyanese context into this discussion. So most of the proverbs I will share will come from Guyana, and I'll have some of the traditional, well-known African proverbs as well to discuss with you. I'll have my colleagues introduce themselves at some point when they're about to take the mic and speak. But we're hoping for this to be a candid discussion, and that all those who listen will learn something as we try to share knowledge within this community at Mount St. Vincent University. What we are going to start by doing is just stating a proverbs or a sayings that we remember or heard sometime back, and we will try to explain it in as best as we can, and then I'll ask my colleagues and the panel members some questions. So one of the proverbs that really appealed to me is, "Don't go to crab dance if you don't want to get dirty." That was a very Canadian way of saying it, and I mixed it with some Guyanese accent there as well. It really goes like this: "Nah go crab dance if you now want to get dirty." It's basically saying, don't go into those places where you know there's trouble if you don't want to get into trouble. And I'm sure that you're out there sitting and asking yourself, what did he just say? All right, I'll say it one more time, and then you can slow the speed of your recording so that you can hear it clearly. Nah go crab dance if you now want to get dirty. And now I'll introduce one of my panel members to state a sayings that they would have learned during their time, and they can explain it as well. Faisal, how about you share one with us?
So my saying that we have, or the context that I come from, is a Sudanese context. First, let me specify that. And then, so the saying is, the older you get, the wiser you become, basically. You probably heard that from a lot of people also here, but it's kind of like a proverb that would have you in mixed feelings, because different people to choose different paths, I believe. And yes, some people become wiser and have wisdom. Some just stay in the same lane with the same wisdom that they have, I believe. And some would either go to the other side. I'll pass it on to Jordan, I believe. And Jordan, want to go on?
My saying, I'm from the Bahamas, so the proverbs I'm about to say are all coming from them. And the first one that came to mind is hard-head bird don't make good soup. And
you gotta say that again for
us. It's hard-head bird don't make good soup. So essentially, like, how I take it is like, if you be stubborn, or if you like make bad choices, or I guess if you don't listen to take advice from, I guess, making an obviously bad choice, you like feel heavy consequences. I don't know how they relate that to making good soup, but they did anyway. So and let's see. I think I had another one too. Um, oh man, until I remember it, I'll pass it to Alexia.
Yeah, great.
That's the mic.
I will. I'm Alexia Major, also from the Bahamas. I will expand on the hard head bird don't make it soup. I think you're on. The way I take it is that if you're stubborn, you're not going to be good for anything. And then everyone wants to enjoy a good pot of soup, so
Yeah,
you're going to put the best ingredients in it. So that's how I would have interpreted that one. So I'm also from the Bahamas, like I said, and the saying that I'm bringing was a favorite of my grandmother's. And until I became a parent, I had no reason to say it, but I find now with a 14-month-old, I say, if you don't listen, you are going to feel. And
Mm-hmm.
really, how it would go is if I wasn't trying to, as you say, get a Canadian, just make it more palatable for a Canadian. It's really, if you don't listen, you can feel. And so I find myself saying that to my son a lot because just listen to me. Take my advice that if you do this thing, you will get hurt or, it's just not going to be in your favor. So that one definitely I would say is just listen to what is being told to you because it can help you or save you from something.
Yeah, no, these are awesome. I think when we reflect on these proverbs or these sayings or these instructions that are passed down to us from through the elders, many times we take these things in, and it comes into one ear, and it supposedly went through the other. Well, many times it's something sticks in there, or maybe because they've said it to us so many times that it eventually stuck after 10 years or something of that sort. And yes, my colleagues are and panelists are nodding here to agree. So, what do you say? What do these sayings and proverbs mean to you? Like Alexia, what do they mean to you?
Well, that one that I shared, I think what it means to me is that just recognizing who's giving me the advice and the context they're giving me that advice in. And it really is for my benefit.
Yeah.
I can remember my grandmother never said that to instill fear. It was really just practical.
Yeah.
If you don't listen, you will feel. And I think that one to me is it's a warning, and it's a warning, but it's also the follow up if you didn't listen,
Yeah.
because then you face the consequence of whatever you're being advised against. And I think, like I said, being a parent now too, sometimes I just have to shake my head because, like, I told you.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
I really like what you mentioned. It's a warning, but there's also advice in there. Don't do this. It's not only saying don't do this and leave it like that. It's saying don't do this or this will happen. So it's an opportunity to teach and an opportunity to learn at the same time. I'm going to ask Jordan to fill in there and just answer that same question for us.
So the saying that I said, what it means to me, I'd say that really and truly is just how I applied it to my life. Like just to say it again, hard ever don't make it soup. Like if you make bad choices, then you really feel it. Then I guess like being in university, I feel that like heavier than ever. Like all the bad choices I make, like I feel the consequences. Like I guess, and to flip that around, I guess if I mix the ingredients and try to make like a good pot of soup or something, then I get like a good, like if I put some carrots and stuff inside there instead of some rocks and nails. But, yeah, I guess y'all get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll ask Face the same question. That's like how have you apply this to your life?
I mean, the way I would say, like, I apply my saying, the older you get, the wiser you become. It's like, I think about it because I think, like, every day you go through, you become older in some way, but do we become wiser in that period? Sometimes I think with myself. sometimes I do some decisions, and I ask myself, why didn't I think about doing something, or like, becoming wiser in that way? But I actually didn't realize sometimes like it's also part of like the the path that a person might also like take towards whatever other decision that would make them wiser or realize what reality of they are. So I'm gonna actually say it's like is how have these instructions guide you guys through your life?
Like I said, it's definitely something that would point me in the direction about like what to do and what not to do. It's I'd say that a lot of the sayings that actually come from the Bahamas are like meant to be like learning, like they're actually meant to be like proverbs, like you say, and you just take them and apply them to your life every day, and just see how best you can use this knowledge to, you know, just help you through every day. As simple as getting up in the morning. What do you want to do differently this morning that's going to help you, like have a better day, for example.
Well, Alexia just mentioned how she applied these sayings to her life, and this is a very practical way of applying your sayings. We go through life, and like I said earlier, the our elders, and this will happen to Alexia as well. She will say the same thing to help her child avoid trouble. She will say it 100,000 times, sometimes that many times per day, and it may or may not stick. But this is exactly what possibly her parents and grandparents had to do for her to remember these sayings right now. So, how have these sayings applied to your life? And I'll ask Jordan, how did these apply to your life right now?
I guess taking even Alexia's own when she said, if you don't listen, you feel.
Mhm.
If you don't, if you don't make, if you don't do the test on time, you're gonna get that F.
Yeah.
If you don't brush your teeth in the morning, you're gonna smell
Yeah.
breath all day. If you don't eat lunch on time, your stomach's gonna growl.
Do you guys ever remember this one? If you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail.
Oh yeah.
So I can't remember how many times I walked into a test in high school, and you tell the teacher, "Well, I don't feel like I'm ready for this test," and they just look at you with a straight face and say, "Well, if you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail."
You couldn't do that in the Bahamas. If you go inside a test, you don't tell the teacher anything. You just go inside and feel you're not studying.
Right. So these are sayings that, and we'll get to that. It's not only things that you learn at home, right? It's part of our lives. Faisal, how have you applied some of these sayings in your life?
I would say the same, going back to the same point Jordan said right now, it's the same thing Alexia said. If you don't do some of the stuff that you do, if you fail, then you gotta face the consequences of it.
All right, perfect. So before I'll just ask this one general question: where have you used this knowledge? And Alexia, you can answer this one quickly for us. You've used it on your son. Have you used it on anyone else or in any other context?
Yeah, absolutely. With my husband almost every day also. Because I think sometimes he forgets how well I know him.
Mhm.
And once again, it's the same principle, if you don't eat lunch right now, you will feel awful later. And then, he'll pick me up and be like, oh, I have a headache. And I'm like, well, did you have lunch?
Yeah,
And so it's really, I would say anyone who I'm close to
yeah,
and anyone who I know will understand that reprimand or that warning as loving and care.
yeah.
I would say I definitely apply that also to myself as well.
Mhm.
I know sometimes I will do things and in the back of my head I can hear it either in my voice or my grandmother's voice actually
Yeah.
when I knew there was a decision or planning I had to do and I didn't do it for whatever reason. So Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't exempt myself from that advice at all.
Yeah, awesome. All right. So, Faisal, could you answer that same question for us? How does this learning this knowledge that you have acquired, how else do you apply it to your life? Do you apply it in terms of sharing with other folks in your circle?
No, I would say it's just maturing,
Mm,
maturing. So I would do that.
yeah, yeah. And Jordan, how about you? Where do you use your knowledge?
I try to really just at work
Mm,
and my professional life really, as
yeah.
well as I guess, but as at home as well, and with friends too. Just as simple as making better decisions all around.
Yeah, I really like what Alexia just said. She applies this to her child, to her partner, but then to yourself. I want us to pick up on that and just reflect on how we apply these proverbs to ourselves or these sayings to ourselves. I would oftentimes have to remind myself of an old Chinese proverbs that says, the beginning of wisdom is to call things by its right name, right? And what I use that in is when I meet with a student or anyone whose name is not I'm not familiar with. I then try to learn how they pronounce their names and to call them by their right names. Oftentimes, you'll have folks say, "Oh, like so for instance, Faisal, he would say something like, "Oh, you can call me Faye, or you can call me Faisal or Faisal," and he would say, "Oh, it doesn't matter." And many students does this, right? And many people do this. But for me, deep down in the back of my mind, I'm always reminding myself that the beginning of wisdom is to call things by its right name, right? I might not be able to say it in the person's mother tongue, but when it's translated to English, I'll say it in that way that that person asked me to say it, or as close as possible to its original setting. How does this? I just shared my example. How does this apply to you guys? So what do you think?
You want to take it first, or you want me to go?
You go.
Okay. Let's see. The beginning of wisdom is calling things by its name. I take it when you first said it. I just took it as not by not as literal as like just like taking someone's name, but like
Mm,
I guess calling things as it is. I
yeah.
guess stepping back and looking at things from a broader perspective. Like if you're just approaching a situation, for example,
Mm,
just going there with like a rational mind, just saying what is what, you know, trying to get things solved instead of beating around the bush and getting
hmm
lost with like irrational thinking.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say the same thing. It just makes stuff more brief and organized for a person,
Yeah.
and just makes your life in a easier and more smooth manner.
hmm
Yep.
Yeah.
Also could make you feel a certain way about stuff, if it doesn't go your way in that manner,
Mm,
because you're going to be thinking about that saying all the time.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, depends how you change it.
Yeah. Are these sayings something that you learned only at home or at school? Do you remember where you learned? I know this topic is like old folks says, but I want you to think back of the context that you came from in Sudan.
Mm-hmm.
Old folks aren't necessarily. It's old folks sayings don't necessarily come from your grandparent. You can walk into the marketplace and be reprimanded by an elderly person or somebody older than you in Guyana, right? Maybe similar in the Bahamas, maybe similar in Sudan, whereby if you make a mistake, someone in the circle will say, "Hey, you need to pull up your bootstraps right? Which basically means get your act together, right? And they don't wait to tell your parents, who will then tell you. There's no hierarchy in that sense of teaching a child in the community. It's the adult who is present is the one who will be there to provide knowledge and wisdom and reprimand at that time. Is that something similar in your context? Faisal, you go first
Yeah,
on
you
this
go
one.
first.
I would say, well, kind of. It is similar in our context, but it would be like it would be something put on the moment to correct anyone's act, just like you said. So
Mm.
yeah. Also, it could be in the form of like advice, for example.
Mm.
Like back home, they have a saying where they would always like, no matter how much education or how much you have, for example, it's never gonna change your real personality. I would
Mm.
say. So you gotta fix yourself first,
Yeah.
basically, they say. And a lot of people will use that in a conversation too. But this saying and the saying you said are kind of both to like correct. And I feel like maybe I don't know if it's like generally like in our culture, but they would use those things to like make you like have a brainstorm, you know? So, so I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I'll just pass the question on to you, Jordan. What do you think about it?
I was just gonna say, just to add on to what you said about the saying that y'all have back home. We have one kind of similar to that. It just goes, you can take the man out the island, but you can't take the island out the man.
Mm-hmm.
And that essentially just means that like you can just take the man off the island, like you could take a Bahamian away from the Bahamas, but you can't take away like his personality or his heart or
his accent.
All the stuff that his parents taught him at home. His grandparents taught him at home.
So this teaching doesn't really stop in your home or in your school. What I'm happy to hear, though, which is familiar in my context, is the ability to learn even when we leave the school and the home setting, that the community participates in teaching and in a more non-traditional manner, which is something that I don't really find that in the North American context. People will usually tell you, no, don't do that. But it's not in this teaching manner to say, don't do that because this will follow. Like we're explaining here, they'll stop you from doing something, and then you have to investigate why you shouldn't do it. But what I get is, growing up in this context, and if that's the norm, then folks who are from this context will understand it, understand those kinds of non-traditional ways of passing knowledge on. I'm just speaking here from the perspective of someone who was immersed in this context and is learning and watching from the outside and looking in to see how things are done. So I really appreciate those examples that you guys both share. How have these instructions guided you through life?
Just, I would say for me, generally giving me wisdom. Sometimes at times where I don't know how to think about some stuff, or these lines would pop up in my mind whenever like a certain problem is happening, or they would be the solution, to some of like the problems I have throughout my days, I would say.
Yeah.
These proverbs or sayings. So
Yeah.
probably you, John.
I'd say the same. We'll probably just adding wisdom. The stuff I said just really the sayings are meant as deterrents from kind of making bad choices, really.
Yeah.
So kind of taking that away from and how I'm using it to guide me through my life. It just helps me learn like what not to do, what to do.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I guess in the moment it just if my mom were to say like if I'm about to do something stupid and she just goes harder, bird don't make good soup.
Yeah.
I just stop and think like, wow, what am I really about to do right now? Is it good stupid? That kind of so
Yeah,
it
yeah,
just helps me from doing something stupid.
I like what Faisal said earlier, that when the old folks says something, proverbs or sayings, it oftentimes causes you to, well, triggers you to stop and think. And you go into this deep thinking process. Okay, what are they trying to tell me? Yeah.
Also, I just want to say at one point, some of these folks would have passed away, or like they're not like there with us. So I
Mhm.
just think like when you think about these proverbs as well, you can't figure it out because they're not there anymore.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And not only that, is that they may have used the same proverbs for 100 things that you have done.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So, right. So it's difficult. I think what you mentioned though of this thought-provoking process, whereby and again you further state that it's not clear. But as a young man, I'll tell you that when you get a little older, you'll really understand what it means. As Alexia was saying that she shared these with her son, it will come full circle when you have to share these proverbs with your children or grandchildren. Then you will understand these are the context in which they were used. Although you're telling your child or grandchild the same thing for many different scenarios, you totally get it because it would have been the same way you received this knowledge, but you get it that this simple knowledge applies for multiple situations, and as such, it should be used. So I really appreciate that the deep thought process of you have to analyze. And I think the analyzing piece as well helps you to develop the kind of wisdom over time to then take the baton from those who have passed on. And now that makes you the elder who has to say those annoying things to annoy the next generation of children, right? Right. So, I think I feel that way right now, although I'm not at that age where I can call myself an elder, or where folks will say he's an elder. I am in that process of administering some of these sayings and proverbs to the next generation, and like 2 generations in. And I'm hoping that at some point it will stop being annoying to them and be words of wisdom to take them to the next level. So, what do you think are some negative aspects of using these proverbs and sayings in Canada?
In Canada.
Yeah, Jordan, how about you? What do you think would be negative about using the proverbs and saying in Canada?
I guess it would stop you from doing a lot. Like it would stop you from taking risks to like go out there and venture and really like to generalize it to make bad decisions that like someone would say is bad, like say coming to Canada from your home country. Someone may say, "Oh, that's a bad decision," but you never know the kind of benefits they reap. So I think exploring things that way as stopping you from doing something that taking a risk to go out there. I think that's one negative aspect you could take from that.
Yeah, let's look at it from the perspective of language, right, and or the accents and language of how we say things. Remember, I said earlier the Chinese proverbs: "The beginning of wisdom is to call things by its right name." When we if I am to speak some of the proverbs in my native language, or not language, in my native tongue, it would be meaningless to a lot of people in this context. And I think from that perspective, it will cause me then to not say the proverbs, and it will take away. Negative for me is taken away from hearing these voices and reminded me of the people who have said these things to me in its native format. In the Canadian context, I now have to transfer the Guyanese context into a Canadian context so that people can understand me, and which means that it then take away most of the meaning of what these sayings want to teach in the proverbs that it wants to teach. Do you ever feel that way?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was just thinking on the next saying, it says, first rat in the hole, get the tail covered.
Yeah.
And like taking it from a Canadian's context, you could take it like, you calling someone a rat, or you take it
Yeah.
like a thief or something.
Yeah.
So like, I guess to take it literally, the first rat to get away is kind of like the one that, that evades trouble. You get
Trouble
what I'm
or
saying?
danger, yeah.
But it really and truly what the saying's supposed to mean from an actual context is, like, if you do things early, like if you do an assignment early, you get your hip covered, really.
Uh-huh.
Or if you cook early, you could go to bed early.
Yeah,
Really,
yeah.
that's all it really means. Or if you get inside early from a party or something, then you're safe from danger. So you get your tail covered. That's what it means.
So he just shared one proverbs and gave us so many examples of how we can use it. Yeah. Go ahead, Faisal.
I mean, it could be the way I might say it, but I don't know because I'm trying to translate it right now. It's like we have this saying is like there's always red lines for everything.
Say it in the native language.
It's in Arabic.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's hear it.
دائما في خطوط حمر لكل شيء. So basically, it's a saying where like there is red lines basically, but what some people over here might take it as, yes, we're allowed to do whatever we want to do, but like there's red lines, for everything. Like trying to just give I'm just trying to, I don't know. I'm just trying to give an example, but I can't honestly find one right now.
Yeah. Well, I just remember this one that is used quite often, and Jordan might agree that he's heard it before. Birds of a feather flock together, right? You could use that for positive, and you could use it for negative. They'll say if they see you hanging out with, and I'm doing air quotes here, bad guys, they'll say, birds of a feather flock together, which means you're part of that bad group.
Yeah.
Right? Or if they see you hanging out with the good guys, they'll be like, yeah, birds of a feather flock together, with a nice smile and all that, just to encourage you. I think both the proverbs are saying birds of a feather flock together. It's both meant to encourage you, but one is said with a smile and one is said with a snark, which is, okay, you need to get out of that. This is a warning. You're hanging out with a certain group and you need to move. You need to leave that group and move to something else. I think
we also have this saying too, because like they believe like your friends make you who you are too in our way.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things my mom would always say, like, don't hang out with this person or that person. Like, Mom, this person's a good guy in the group. That guy is a bad guy.
Yeah. So I think these proverbs are saying have stretched across the African diaspora, whereby we do have the same contextual meaning, but different ways of saying it, and it's often based on our surroundings. In terms of, if I live around water, my proverbs will be linked to water or fish or fishing or something, boats or something of that sort. If I live in the forested area, there'll be lots of proverbs about trees and woods and those kinds of things. So what I found is that the old folks use the materials that we're most what the materials we are most aware of or we are most comfortable using to teach us how to go through life, right? Which is a skill or something that was never taught in school for many of these folks. It's just knowledge that was passed on through the ages, passed down through the ages, which leads to my next question then. Will you share some of these sayings and proverbs with your children? Or how will you share these sayings and proverbs with your children when the time comes?
The way my dad said to me, the older you become, the wiser you get, is usually after like a problem in my life is usually done, because I don't know, I'm a troublemaker, I would say. Like the way he said it was like after that thing is done and everything's all right, then he'd be like, always remember, the older you become, the wiser you get, and he would just close the door, you know. And he j- I think him closing the door and not talking anymore, uh, just triggered it in my head, you know.
Yeah.
So till now, and I know what, maybe because now he's far away. If anything happens like in my life, then you'll be like, the older you get, the wiser you become, and you'll probably close that line.
Now close the door, you just hang up the phone. That's like, yeah. So how will you teach these? What method would you use to teach the next generation?
Just I'm gonna close the door.
So that one works for you, so you'll use it by yourself.
It's
Yeah. How about you, Jordan?
I think I'd want to be just as annoying as my parents were with the scenes, just because I feel like they had an impact on me and like me using it in life. So I
Yeah.
definitely want to have the same impact on my kids.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess just hearing it every day, just going in the kitchen, cooking dinner,
Mm.
or getting up for school or something, hearing the scenes. I probably would say it every day. I probably do say it every day now and don't even realize it, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. Jordan, I was sharing with you a few days ago that I've analyzed the Bob Marley's collection, and within all of his songs but one, there are African proverbs or sayings that were included in his songs. So these sayings transcend just the home or formal school setting. It's used in a more social manner where across the world people are listening to music and singing songs that includes the teachings and sayings we have learned in our homes. Maybe they understand, maybe not, but these teachings transcends just the traditional school system, and it is included in our social circles, music, in our movies, in our plays, public plays, where we will get these proverbs and sayings being brought back to life. For me, what I do with my sons, what I did with my sons for the whole of 2019 and 2020, I shared a proverb a day. Every day I gave them a new proverb. And we made it a really fun activity. I didn't get it that way. When I learned the proverbs, it was like usually at a time when I was doing something, whether good or bad, and it's been told to me.
Mhm.
So I have decided that even if I say these things to my sons, it will make no sense because I learned in a Guyanese context there in Canada. I'll be talking about mud and Black Dam and those kinds of things, and they're like, what is he talking about? Right? So, in a Canadian context, I need to talk about snow and weather and those kinds of things.
You'll have to make it up.
Yeah, I gotta make it up, right? So, and this is exactly what I do during story time with them. I would use things that when I tell these stories, I bring it to a Canadian context. We used to have this story, Sensible and Stupidity Bill. It's just two bills, and one is sensible and one is stupid. And all they would do is just tell you. They would just the elderly would just look at you, or the old folks would look at you and see something that you're doing, and they'll tell you a story about Sensible and Stupidity Bill based on what you're doing. Just teaching you, like instantly. They'll say, without calling you out, they'll tell you a story. You will have a good laugh, but you will be able to determine that, hey, what I just did was very stupid, right? Based on a story. So I think, our teachers did some really good thing in terms of teaching. And yeah, getting back to what I was saying about how I teach my sons these proverbs is we had it as a competition once, then they were rewarded for remembering. And then I asked them now to teach me the proverbs that I've been teaching them over the past 2 years. So because they thought, well, okay, after 365 days, Daddy cannot have another Proverbs to share. I would be out. But what I said to them, if you remember the one I shared with you, any of the ones I shared with you during the week, I'll give you a new one. And I always have a new one for them because I have this bank of thousands of proverbs and sayings just waiting to share with them. Right. And so they were always eager to learn something else, a Proverbs.
Is there a reward with that proverb that they learn?
Life skills, man.
Can't tell them.
No, I mean, like, is there like a reward because
like a chocolate
or something? That's my question.
Some tenders
or something that's
Yeah, you're thinking about a tangible reward.
Yeah, because my mom used to do something of similar with grades, but she would put stickers, and every week there would be a certain sticker, and I'll be like, okay, I want 5 stickers by the end of the week.
No. There was no tangible rewards. The rewards in this was, and I explained to the children that the Proverbs is a language, right? If you're the only person that can say it and understand it, then it's useless. If no one understands what you're saying. But if they learn this language that I have, I can meet them in a public setting and speak to them through the Proverbs, and they will understand without being ashamed. If they're doing something stupid, I can just say something like birds of a feather flock together without embarrassing them amongst their friends. Right? They will get it. So we treated the Proverbs like a new language and have decided to teach each other this new language so that when we go in an outside context, we'll be able to communicate without offending each other or offending others in our circle. And for that, the boys really appreciate that, and they wanted to use that as that is their reward, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
so
amazing.
So that's how I use this.
You guys made your own new language. I would say.
I think the tangible reward for us growing up was just not hearing it at all. Sometimes, I remember this one time I don't ask me what I was doing on the roof, but I was crawling through the roof. And I was kind of a fat kid, so I just dropped through the roof. It was very sturdy.
Yeah.
And I had this big slice on my hand, just coming straight from the finger, straight across my wrist. And like all the time in the hospital, my mom was right there just saying, no. I can't even remember what she was saying, man, but it was just one thing that I was just like, if you could just stop saying this, that would just make me feel bad. And that's the reward, honestly.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. No, and there's this other one that we often say. I think I've heard this in so many other contexts. But you can take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
mhm.
This is very much applicable in this setting, in that you can teach a child, or someone could be teaching you as much as as they want. And sometimes I think the old folks feel that way so often. They'll be like, how many times did I tell this child, if you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail? And yet his next test he failed. And when he comes home, he plays instead of studying. Right. So I think at times they feel the same thing. Like, if you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make him drink. But I still think over time, the old folks have learned that they cannot give up on us. Right. They continue to share these proverbs. Even today, my grandma, she continues to tell me these proverbs. When I, in turn, talk about these proverbs with her and these sayings with her, just to bring back to memory some of the things she would have said, then she will say something like, oh, I bet you haven't heard this one or this one. And so I would say, well, you had no reason to tell me that because I was a good child. Right? Right. So, I mean, over time, we feel as though these sayings and proverbs have been useless to us in life. But I think we get it, and we will eventually find its usefulness, and the opportunity to teach. So here we are at the end of this discussion. Have you learned anything new from this talk today?
Yeah, I feel like I learned how you guys take different sayings that I've heard before, but how you guys take it in a different context.
Yeah.
I think it's a cool way to learn how you can also apply the same things in like a different way, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Ed?
I think with some of the sayings, the meanings and the stuff from like listening today, I just think some of them were double-sided. Some
Yeah.
of them had one point and one go. It just depends on like how you're gonna use the proverb or saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What I get from this is, that we weren't alone.
Yeah.
Is that in every context there are proverbs that are quite similar to the ones that were mentioned. And I did hear both of you said things that we would have said in Guyana, but said it differently based on whatever the surroundings are or whatever tools we're using or something of that sort. So I know this exists already, but just hearing it from how you guys present the teachings that you have been privileged to learn is really interesting. And also what I gathered too is that you really enjoyed the way your parents and the old folks taught you the proverbs, because you both said that you will use that same method to teach your children, right? Which is, if your parents are hearing, which they'll be very proud of to know. All right, so I've been your trusty host today, discussing like old folks used to say. And this is the end of this podcast, and I want to thank all panel members and colleagues who left a little bit early today. We had a really good discussion, and I really appreciate your contribution. Thank you, guys.
No problem. Thanks for Randy.